The Executive Director of APEC, Dr. Alan Bollard, is a distinguished speaker at the Asian Financial Forum 2014 here in Hong Kong. And Hong Kong is also the venue for the APEC Finance Ministers meeting a little bit later. And Dr. Bollard joins us from Singapore. Thanks indeed. Now, looking really at the ministers meeting that there was in Indonesia much earlier this year, could you tell me really what you would see as being what came out of the meeting in terms of promoting both free trade as well as open economies?
Yeah, we had a good summit of leaders meeting in Bali in October, and they were reviewing how APEC has been doing in terms of helping progress trade and investment liberalisation through the whole region over the year and setting some directions for the future. It's really a matter of getting all this moving in the same direction. It's a bit like a flotilla of different ships all sailing in one direction. There's 40 or so initiatives going on at the minute, and they're all aimed at helping promote trade and investment right across all these countries, and also basically getting better economic outcomes for people in the region.
So looking at the data arising, is multilateralism really very much alive?
Oh, absolutely. We have 21 different economies, completely different economies coming together in APEC, all from around the Pacific Rim, and they're all agreeing with a whole range of different initiatives. These are done on a voluntary basis. It's a little bit different from WTO. They've been easier to sign up with. It's been easier to experiment and try things out. It's quite a long game that we're playing in all of this, but it's been an important part of that very big growth in trade around the region over the last 2 decades, which in turn has been a very big part of the big growth improvements that we've seen.
Now, there has been a multiplicity of agreements of different forums here in the Asia-Pacific, including the Trans-Pacific Partnership Arrangement. But are these a help or a hindrance where it comes to free trade?
Well, we hope that it helps it. We'll get a better picture of that during the coming year when we get more information on TPP. But it's not just TPP. The ASEAN economic community that's been developing and now going into broader negotiation with the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. We've got G20 with various initiatives. We've had the WTO and, of course, in the Latin economies, the Pacific Alliance as well.
So how would you say that APEC is really evolving right now? And what will be the thrust of the meeting here in Hong Kong of the finance ministers of APEC?
Hong Kong, yes, will be a host for the finance ministers meeting for APEC during 2014, and that's where we would expect to see continued work going on deepening and broadening the financial sectors through the Asia-Pacific region and working out how they can contribute better to getting better growth through the region.
You mentioned finance and also supply chains, so will a lot of the thrust of the meeting really depend on trade finance?
Yes, I'm sure that will come up. However, as well, there's the general fact that in the region, economies are changing. Ever since the global financial crisis, we've seen quite a soggy recovery, changes in the balance of economies through the region. We're seeing still the ongoing challenge of tapering of quantitative easing and the challenge that some of the smaller open economies have of dealing with some of the spillover effects of the capital flows, the impacts on asset prices, the impacts on exchange rates. And in less developed economies, we're seeing less trade-driven growth and more domestic demand-driven growth. And indeed, we're seeing the growth of middle-income groups in economies as well. And that all says it's a different world that we're operating in, and we all need to understand how that might impact things and how APEC will fit in that sort of environment. And what is the future of what in the past has been trade-driven growth in this region?
You're going to be at the Asian Financial Forum 2014. What's your message to the forum?
The message that how advanced this region has been, but it's only happened that way through economic interdependence. No one economy goes ahead on its own. In the past, we've seen developed economies like the US having their consumers driving growth. I think that's going to change a bit. We're seeing a bit of rebalancing in competitiveness between developing and developed economies in the region. And we're seeing different drivers of growth, and that's what we'd like to hear more about.
What are the specific drivers of growth that you mentioned there?
Well, the potential that some of the larger developing economies have got to get domestic demand, and what sort of challenges that puts up for policy makers in those economies, what that means for different trade patterns across the Pacific, the potential for the United States and other developed economies to regain some competitiveness, the changes in some of the commodity prices and energy prices that we're seeing through the region and how that changes things as well, and there'll be other stuff too.
Dr. Bollard, thanks very much for joining us from Singapore, and look forward to seeing you at the Asian Financial Forum.